is a hospital system with 4 hospitals and 75 clinics. And they created a program called Envision that provided a broad strategy to offset energy consumption through conservation and renewable energy projects. In the wake of ongoing rising costs, Gunderson conducted an energy audit in 2008 that led to the investment of critical conservation measures that have reached $2 million a year in annual energy savings. From there, the organization, led by a very innovative CEO, began to explore and utilize an array of renewable energy sources, including solar, wind, and biofuel, to generate electricity that it actually either uses, of course, or sells back to the grid. Designing and building energy efficient facilities is a third key component in their plan. So by the end of this year, they plan to be energy neutral. Okay? So why isn't everybody doing that? Right? What motivated, what made that hospital system take that kind of action? Well, so what I want to explore in the 15 minutes or so that I have is that behavior change takes several things. It takes information. People have to have a case. They have to have reasons why they should do something. Otherwise, who would do anything, right? But then they also have to have some motivation to make that change as well. And third, a lot of times people need rewards. So one of my points in this is as well to think about examples where policy choices are put into place, policy changes are put into place so that people don't have to make that choice on a daily basis. When you walk out of the room, the lights turn off because nobody else is in the room. Now, you didn't have to make a choice about turning that off. You didn't have to make a choice about turning off your computer if you've got it on sleep mode. So those kinds of policy choices and policies that we put into place are probably more effective. But we need lots of different things to make demand reduction really work. So I'm here as a physician, as you've heard already before, because burning fossil fuels of any kind is bad for your health. Whether it's coal and produces carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, and mercury, whether it's natural gas and produces nitrous oxide and particulates, whether it's wood-burning stoves and women who are cooking over wood-burning stoves and getting particulates and dying early. So burning fossil fuels and burning anything, really, can have the potential for harming human health. And of course, we care about human health. We want our children not to have asthma. We want our elderly people not to die of that heart attack or heart arrhythmia or any of the other things that you heard about earlier. So the second component is that burning fossil fuels is the leading cause of climate change. Okay, now nobody yet has talked about what are the health impacts of climate change. So the people who are most impacted by climate change currently in our country are the very young, the very old, and those who already have chronic diseases. Those people are most affected by the air pollution, ground level ozone that comes from climate change. They're most affected in heat waves and become ill from it. They are impacted by the 1.8 degree temperature rise that our country and in Tennessee has already seen in the last century. So burning fossil fuels in this country is mostly caused by burning fossil fuels. I said that wrong, but you got the message, I'm sure. So what do we do about it? Well, in Tennessee, one of the possible choices is solar. California leads the country in solar production. They have over 4,000 megawatts of solar in that state. That is enough solar power, if it were here in Tennessee, to electrify 42% of your homes. That's a lot of solar. Now, how many people have a solar array on their roof? Great. I do too. It costs probably about $20,000, and you get certain rebates, But a lot of people don't have $20,000 sitting in their bank account with the kids' tuition and everything else going on. So many people in Tennessee don't know that you can put a solar array on your home without shelling out any money at all. So there's mechanisms to do these kinds of things. The other major improvement, as you've heard eloquently from the last speaker, is energy efficiency. So building efficiency in particular is going to be a major component. How many people have actually added insulation to their home? Okay, a lot more. It costs a lot less. Well, it took me 2 years to do that after I had an energy audit because they gave me too much information. But when I finally did it, my home was so much more comfortable. I didn't have drafts. I could actually set my thermostat 2 degrees lower and still be comfortable. So it gives you a lot of benefits. That actually there is insulation. Obviously, the other things in our buildings, actually in Tennessee, 44% of your electricity goes for heating and cooling. The other big ones are electronics, appliances, and lighting. So putting emphasis in that area is going to help as well. Oops. Okay. Climate change is already impacting Tennessee. This is a map from the National Climate Assessment that shows that heavy precipitation events have already increased by this percentage in these various areas in the United States over the last 50 years. So here in Tennessee, 26%. And how many people were here in Nashville at the time of the 2010 flood? So a number of people were here and impacted by loss of homes. A lot of cultural sites were impacted by this flooding. Homes develop mold. Sometimes they have to be torn down. A lot of health impacts from flooding, as well as the high cost of infrastructure damage that can occur with heavy rains and other sorts of extreme weather events. So lastly, as you already heard, there are multiple benefits to energy efficiency. So it's not just that it makes you feel more comfortable and your cost goes down, but you have more jobs. It's the cheapest form of addressing electricity needs, and it reduces the health risk of climate change. So just to reiterate, burning fossil fuels is the leading cause of air and water pollution in this country. Secondly, it's the leading cause of climate change. There are already climate change health and economic problems here in Tennessee. Solar panels don't cause air pollution, and if we're careful, they don't cause water pollution. And energy efficiency is the cheapest. So, of the three aspects of how did I do in terms of convincing you about, I made the case, well, maybe we should do more solar, maybe we should do more energy efficiency. One of the things that we know is that if people feel that the story is local or personal, they are more likely to take action. If it's, oh, it's that, those people in Alaska, the permafrost is melting, it's not me, or it's going to happen 50 years in the future. So that provides motivation. I tried not to overwhelm you with too much information. I didn't talk about tipping points, and I didn't talk about the 100-year flood, and it's going to happen every 10 years, and all kinds of statistics like that. So it's better to tell stories that reflect values. So we care about our families. We care about cost efficiency. We want to protect our children and leave them a better world. So using values. I tried not to be too much of an alarmist. And very importantly, I didn't dump a huge problem on your head and not offer you a solution. Okay, so that's really important in terms of motivating people. Well, so you're all convinced, but now are you really going to take action? What are you going to do about this? To do the next step, to get people to actually take action, it's important for those of us who are in the state government, those of us who are in NGOs, those of us who are in academics, to say, what are the best choices? And let's advocate for them together. That's probably really helpful. As you already heard, my bias, I think policy change where people don't have to make decisions. For example, that new housing has certain standards. So a new house is being built, it's going to have a certain level of insulation. The new homeowner doesn't even have to think about it, right? So it's a done deal. You've got a better product. But we still need the individual actions and community actions, and they're still very, very important. And I think we need them all. So one of the things is to actually provide information about specific targets, but not give too many choices. So too many choices is really hard. I mean, if somebody looks at an array of 30 jellies and jams, and they chances are they're going to walk out of the store without buying any than if they had a choice of 6. Okay, so if you get your energy audit and it's got 20 different things on there, you hand it back to the energy auditor and you say, what's the most important one? Or 2 or 3. And maybe I'll do those. Okay, so that's really helpful. The second is understand, if you are the person who wants people to make change, is to understand, well, what the barriers are. Because there's always barriers to any behavior change. It's easier to not do anything than it is to make a change. So there's costs involved. Okay, so a front-loading washing machine, if you don't need a new washing machine, you're not going to go out and buy one, right? So the cost ideas that were presented earlier, trying to make those available as a policy choice is extremely important. So we should all be advocating for those. Obviously, making changes takes time and effort. And you have to help make sure that people understand what the benefits are. So, So the benefits for putting on my solar array, it cost me money up front, but my rate of return is going to be much higher than I would get on a mutual fund over the next 20 years. So there is truly a benefit for me to actually shell out that money rather than let it sit in the bank and earn 0.1% interest. Rather, it's sitting on my roof making electricity, and I'm going to have a better rate of return than if I'd invested it in mutual funds. So knowing the benefits of these kinds of things can be very helpful, and we have to make sure that people know about that. Sometimes making behaviors easy is also useful. So if you had to sign up for your lunch today before the event, and the option was vegetarian, and you had to choose to have a beef sandwich, 80% of people would actually not have checked any, and they would have gotten vegetarian. Okay? So now that we all know that beef creates a lot of methane, another one of those climate change things, then we would have helped the planet by reducing the amount of methane that we produce. So having things that are opt-ins to do the thing that is actually not as good for the society is one way to make that happen too. The others that we overlook frequently is what are the social pressures. So this lovely couple has a solar array and a plug-in electric car, and boy, they look really cool. And I'd really like to look like them too. So social pressures are really important. There are a lot of legislators who are having a lot of social pressures to not make a stand on climate change, right? They're afraid they're going to get run out of office, okay? So if a whole bunch of people tell them, we care a lot about climate change, I don't care if you're independent or Democrat or Republican, we care about climate change, that's going to be helpful. So social pressure is really important. So take a look at this. What is the most likely message to make a person who isn't in this room, I mean, average person who isn't that knowledgeable about climate change, to actually reuse their towel a second day? So he's going to partner with the environment. Okay. How many people think it's help the hotel save energy? Nobody. Okay. How many people said 75% of guests who stayed in this room reused their towels? Okay. How many times have you seen that sign in the hotel? Not very many, but this is what research shows. So that, 49% of the time, if you think somebody else who's just like you and stayed in that room is going to use their towel a second time, that's the best message to give. Okay, so there's social behavior that we need to know. A lot of people, I'm sure, have some sort of cars now that give them feedback. So feedback is one way of reward, really, because it's telling you how you're performing. So when I first got my Prius, I took it back to the dealer. I said, you know what, this car doesn't work very good. I don't get good gas mileage on this car, and I think there's a problem with it. I think I have a lemon. And so he drove me around, and he barely accelerated from a red light, and he watched for the next red light that was coming up. And I realized that I could change, if I changed my behavior, I'd have a whole lot better mileage, right? That thing really changed my driving habits. I was a really aggressive driver. Now I'm not. So it helped save somebody probably, including myself, from an accident, but it also gave me immediate feedback on what I should be doing. So explaining the impacts and making them real for people can be very, very helpful. So heat pumps, somebody was talking about heat pumps earlier and electricity for heat, actually is better for the environment than natural gas heating, especially in a more moderate climate. 8 times as much was spent in the last year on disaster relief from climate change than was spent on energy reduction. Okay, so where are we putting our money? And we need to teach people to read their electric bills. So that's kind of information that provides people with information. Setting goals in public and providing a social award is also very helpful. So how many people bike to work? All right, clap for these people. Yay! That's really great. So Gunderson Lutheran is part of Practice Green Health, and Practice Green Health has a program called Healthy Hospitals Initiative. And they give awards every year to hospitals that have reduced their waste and have reduced their energy footprint and have reduced and improved the sustainability of their function, which is really, really important. Last thing is that when you give this kind of talk, it's really important to know who your audience is. So a person who owns their own home, it's pretty straightforward. Is it an apartment building that's owned by a landlord and they don't pay the electric bill? Or that they do pay the electric bill? So the motivations there are going to be different, and how you message things is very, very important. I got a lot of this information from these two sources because there has been some research in this, and I hope a lot more research in this because we have a lot of way to go to make that happen. So I encourage everybody to take some sort of action. Advocate for energy efficiency and renewables because natural gas is just as bad as coal. Thank you.